but I can't do it. I said, okay, let me see what I can do. In this camp, it was a camp, a concentration camp, we had a hospital. It was like a field hospital. This hospital had maybe about 20 beds, and we had a doctor in this hospital. And I knew the doctor because he was a Jewish doctor from back home, from my city. And he was in charge of this hospital, except he didn't have any patients. That hospital was there for looks only. When the Red Cross came in, the Swiss Red Cross came maybe 3 or 4 times. When they would come in, they would take him to the hospital, and they would show him how well they treat us. We even have hospitals for these people. And they would take him in there, and they had these neatly lined up beds, but there was nobody on them except that day. That day, they brought in prisoners, and they laid them down in these hospital beds, and they told them not to open their mouth. And they would bring in the Swiss Red Cross, they would look around, they were satisfied, and they walked out. As soon as they walked, they kicked everybody out of there. So I went to see, they had a doctor in charge. I went to the doctor and I told him I had a problem. He said, what's the matter? I said, my brother, he can't make it. And he shook his head, yeah, I know. What do you want me to do? I said, well, what can you do? He said, I don't even have an aspirin. What do you want me to give him? I said, you're the doctor. I said, I don't know. Is there anything? He says, nothing. Absolutely nothing. We don't even have an aspirin, he said. And I believed him because he didn't. He said, bring your brother in here. So I went back to the barrack and I grabbed him on my back and just hauled him in there and laid him down on one of those beds. He said, leave him here. And then what? He said, just don't worry about it, just leave him here. And I went off to work. When I came back that evening, I went to see him. He was gone. So I asked the doctor, where's my brother? He says, I don't want to talk about it. Which means that either he passed on or they just picked him up and hauled him off. This is what the hospital was good for. I was assigned at one time to what they called a totem commander, which is a group that every morning went from barrack to barrack picking up the people that died during the night or people that were so sick they couldn't go to work, like the condition my brother was in. We had to load them on these bucks and these carts. Have you ever seen an ox cart with 2 wheels on them? All they have are 2 wheels. They use them on the farms. We loaded these bodies on these ox carts. And we would go in and pick somebody up. Say, hey, I'm not dead. What are you doing to me? We have to pick you up. Now, you know what happens if we don't pick you up? They kill you and they kill us. Those were the orders. And there was an assessment with us all the time, so we picked up people that were begging that I'm not dead. We had to pick them up. We loaded them on in these ox carts and took them straight to the crematoriums. I'd say 25 to 30% were killed while they were still alive. Just like you saw some of these pictures that they killed people. This is what I went through. Well, I put up with this until sometimes early part of April of 1945. The Americans kept coming closer and closer. The Russians were already liberated Auschwitz, and the French also, the Free French also were advancing toward us. They decided to move us out of there and take us back to Dachau. They loaded us on trucks. It was a long line of trucks, and they took us back to Dachau. We got to Dachau, and they lined us up, and they divided us in 2 groups. Those are healthy, go over to the right, and those that don't feel well, let's go to the left. Well, I had a problem. I could not decide whether I'm sick or well. We knew there was something up their sleeve, but we couldn't figure out what they were doing. So a couple of friends of mine, we got to say, what are we doing? If we're sick, they're probably going to kill us, but tonight we'll be gone. If we're healthy, we don't know. They might kill us just as well. The Americans are coming closer. They're going to do something. We decided to be healthy. So we moved in the healthy column. That evening, they put a column, 12,000 or so, and they marched us out of Dachau. And one of them made a speech, an officer made a speech, and he told us that we're going to stop the Americans from advancing. Can you imagine, we call it the chutzpah, the gall, for them to tell us that we're going to stop the Americans, and they handed out shovels, and we're going to go and build trenches like the Maginot Line. We're going to stop the American tanks from advancing. Well, an order is an order, so we marched off. So what they did is we marched at night, and we rested in the daytime. They didn't want the people to see us in the villages, to see us, the shape we were in where we were going. So at night, we marched all night, and in the daytime, we rested. And they did not feed us. We went out on the fields and dug up potatoes, carrots, onions, cabbage, whatever we could. And we ate it raw, dirty and raw. We just ate. So you might say, my God, how come you all didn't get sick? Oh, yes, we did. As a matter of fact, I was quarantined for 30 days with typhus fever. There was a clip there showing typhus fever. I was quarantined for 30 days with typhus fever. More than half of those of us that were put in this barrack died. I made it. How? I don't know. No medicine, hardly any food at all. How did I make it? I don't know. Some of these young people ask me, well, how did you make it? Well, I don't know. I survived. I survived. Anyway, we marched like this for almost 10 days or so. Many of us died because they couldn't walk, no food. Well, while we were marching one night, I walked away from the column. I had enough. I didn't feel good. I was running temperature. I knew I was. I just walked away. It was at night. I saw a light, maybe 200-300 feet away, and I walked in that direction. I knew I was going to be shot at. I knew I was going to be killed because that's what they did. If you walked away, they would kill you. Well, they didn't. At this point, some of the guards already threw their guns away. They changed from military uniform into civilian clothes. They tried to save their own skin. So apparently they didn't bother with me. I came to this light, and it was a house. I knocked on the door, and a little boy appeared at the door. And he saw me, and he started screaming. Well, can you imagine the shape I was in? I haven't had a shower in 6 months. My hair, my beard, my filth all over me. He started screaming. He's a little 5-year-old little boy. And his mother came running out. She looked at me and says, oh my God, what are you? Who are you? I told her I was a political prisoner from Hungary. I was afraid to tell her I was Jewish because I knew the love the Germans had for the Jews. So I told her I was a Hungarian. She took me in, she sat me down, and she said, you must be hungry. I said, am I hungry? And she started feeding me, and I couldn't stop eating. And I became sick. I started throwing up, and I got diarrhea, but meantime I kept eating, and she said, enough, and I said, no. I just couldn't stop eating. While I was there, a man walked out from another room, and he had a military uniform on, but he belonged to the Wehrmacht, which is the regular army, not the SS. And it scared me, but I knew that he was not one of the real bad ones. And he came in and he said to me, calm down, nothing will happen, I won't hurt you. And he spoke to me in German, and he said, it's almost over. You'll be liberated in a few days, just calm down. We're going to keep you here.